Welcome to today's training event. This is on the IGCSE specification A, which has the course code of 4EA. So I'm Teresa, I'm a senior examiner on this paper, and you're all very welcome. Now, just so that we know we can use the chat, and this is an international qualification, I would say to you good morning because I'm in London. But if you could just pop into the chat box where you're joining us from today so that we all know that we're able to use that chat box. So if I could encourage you to do that just for a moment, and then we'll all be up and running. Okay, so London, Dubai, Romania. So we've started Warsaw, we've started, with the worldwide, oh gosh, Indonesia, New Zealand, Ireland, Sri Lanka. Okay, so we can see now that we are a worldwide clientele. Okay, welcome everyone. So in your resources tab, you should have a number of downloads. You have a copy of these slides, a copy of the latest specification, which is issue 6, a copy of the latest anthology, which is SO3, which is issue 7 of the anthology. SO4 and SO5, one is an editable lesson plan, one is an editable scheme of work. SO6 is a course planner. SO7 and SO8 are the question paper and mark scheme for the 4EA 101, paper 1. And SO9 is the question paper for 4EA 102. I'll be talking about that a bit more. Okay, we can, I think we can put a hyperlink. I'll leave that to our tech team in the background. I think we can put a hyperlink so that you can access the resources. But they should be under the resources tab on the bottom bar of your Zoom screen, hopefully. Okay. So our agenda for today, we've got 2 hours. Our agenda is very much on content and planning today. So we're going to have a little bit about who Pearson Edexcel are as a company. A little bit on content and planning. Thanks very much. So if you've got a link there, that will give you all of the resources in the background. Thanks for that. A little tiny bit on assessment and mark schemes, and a bit on support resources and final questions. So we're together today for 2 hours. I'm aware that for some of you it's quite late in the day if you're over there in China, not on the kind of far east, and if you're in New Zealand, of course, you're very much later. So today is very much about the content of the course, teaching and planning, and support. And module 2, which is on Thursday, is much more focused on marking and assessment, just so that you know where we're going in these 2 training sessions. We'll touch on assessment a little bit today, but it won't be in as much detail as content and planning. So we're looking at how the qualification is devised and awarded, looking at the content, course planners and lessons, assessments. Excellent. Looks like you've all got the resources now. That's great. How to prepare students and where to find support. So just a little bit about Pearson Edexcel. When I first started working for them, they were Edexcel and they were about assessment, and Pearson was the name of the publishing arm of the company, but they've now come together and we call ourselves Pearson Edexcel. So this just tells you a little bit about Pearson being the world's largest learning company. And obviously it's about lifelong learning. We're all about that, aren't we, as teachers? I think in this slide, some of the most interesting things here are the statistics, says an English teacher. So over 150 years of international education experience. Find these stats quite interesting. 3.4 million learners in over 70 countries and over 9 million scripts marked each year. That's a massive amount. So, it's that desire to make a measurable change to student learning, to provide them with tools for life, really. So that's really what we're about. So that's a little bit about the organisation. We're now going to move on to the main content of the course, and there will be opportunities for you to share good practice in the chat box today. Might just be a good idea if we just pop into the chat box whether you're, I mean, this is a getting ready to teach course, so it is designed for for teachers who are brand new to teaching this particular specification. But can you just pop in there whether you're new or whether you've been teaching it for a few years? That just keeps us a little bit active in that chat box as well. Okay, so we've got new. Oh, lots of people new. That's excellent. Oh, teaching for 7 years. Teaching first year for some. New graduate teacher, 10 years. Okay. Year and a half. Okay, so we've got people who are experienced. As I said, this is designed obviously for getting ready to teach. If you're new, hopefully those of you who are established and you've been teaching it for a while, you'll be able to share what your students enjoy and how you teach it and be able to share good practice. That's lovely. Thank you. So a little bit about the content. Students study a range of non-fiction and fiction texts from that international anthology. They develop skills in reading and understanding unseen texts. They develop skills to analyze and compare different texts. But of course, it's not just about reading. We've got the development of the transactional and imaginative writing skills as well, and develop speaking and listening skills. And some of you may do the endorsement and some of you may not. That's a choice, obviously, that you have on the international. It's mandatory on the home GCSE, but it is optional on the international. So let's just have a little look at how the qualification is put together here. I'm just going to minimize my chat for a moment. So we've got the component 1, which is, thanks for putting those resources up again. Component 1 is for EA 101. Everyone for component 1 has to do the exam. It's transactional writing. It's 60%, so it's heavily weighted in terms of the full qualification. It's a 2-hour, 15-minute exam. It carries 90 of the total 150 marks. So we've got the reading, which is section A. It's a mixture of short and long answer questions related to the non-fiction text from part 1 of the Pearson EdXL anthology and one previously unseen extract. So in short, we're looking at students will have studied, we'll look at the text in a moment, but they'll have studied all of those anthology extracts in section 1. One of those will appear in the exam against a text that they have previously not seen, but has a connection with the text that they've studied with you in class. And there are 45 marks on the reading questions here, and there are 5 reading questions. And then in section B, they are given a choice of 2 transactional writing tasks that have a loose connection to the theme, really, of the section A materials. They'll be given an audience, form and purpose, and they're marked there for AO4 and AO5. And we'll be talking about those assessment objectives a bit later on. Then there's a choice. So centres choose either component 2, which is an exam, or component 3, which is coursework. And these mirror each other, as you can see from the slide. So section A is an essay question on either a poetry or prose text from part 2 of the anthology. And writing task, which is an imaginative writing task. And those two questions are equally weighted. No, this is an untiered paper. So thank you for that question. So for section A reading, they will have seen the text before. They will have seen one of the texts before, but not the other one. So one of the texts is from the anthology and the other text is unseen. So there are two texts for section A of component 1. Okay, and the coursework, component 3, there's poetry and prose text. Students write a response to one essay question based on 3 of the texts from part 2 of the anthology. One must be poetry, one must be prose, and a free choice of the other. And then they do an imaginative writing response that mirrors that section B of the exam paper. So the spoken language endorsement is optional. It's a presentation. It can be a speech or a talk by a student, followed by questions or a formal debate dialogue, such as an interview. The presentation should be prepared. How many of you, if you just pop into the text chat, are you thinking of doing the endorsements or not? It would just be interesting to see how many people are thinking about that. Okay, mix sort of a fair mixture, about even actually. Some do, some don't. Okay, thank you. So it looks to me to be about 50-50 as those who are coming up there. Okay, so a little bit now about the specification. Obviously, this is a key document that you'll need to read before you start teaching. Those of you already teaching will know it well. It's got the key content, assessment, core objectives. The sample assessment materials are also important documents. They're the first set of materials to be written, and obviously they're actually never sat by a full cohort of students. But these documents are in your download pack. I'm just going to have a look. The specification is SO2 in that pack. Okay, thanks for that question there, Caitlin, about the endorsement. We have had informal feedback to say that universities are looking at the grade. Obviously, you get pass, merit, or distinction. We've had some informal feedback about strange courses such as dentistry looking at the endorsement, but that is just informal. We've had nothing formal back, but I don't know if anybody who has been teaching this spec for a while, who does the endorsement, would like to make any comment. Please feel free to pop that into the chat box. No problem. So then we've got the anthology, and this is really at the heart of the 4EA1 qualification. Part 1 is used for paper 1, part 2 is used for papers 2 and 3. Ordered, obviously, free copies for use in the classroom. All of the texts in part 1 need to be studied for paper 1. If you're doing the exam route, all of the texts for paper 2 need to be studied for paper 2. Students need to be confident about using these. Part 3 of that anthology, if you're doing the English literature qualification, you'll be studying part 3 of that anthology. So looking at part 1 of the anthology for paper 1, this is the theme text for part 1, the reading questions for paper 1, and this is students will be using this for questions 4 and 5. So I might just invite you now, if you've been teaching this for a while, or if you've read through all of these, to just pop into the text chat there. What is it? What's your favorite one? but the extracts are from the Danger of a Single Story, A Passage to Africa, The Explorer's Daughter, Explorers or Boys Messing About, Between a Rock and a Hard Place, Young and Dyslexic, From a Game of Polo with a Headless Goat, which was the June 2024 extract, so we'll be having a little look at that later. Beyond the Sky and the Earth, H is for Hawk, and Chinese Cinderella. So if anybody has a favourite there, just pop them into the chat. That's for part 1, paper 1, the anthology. Yeah, I'm not sure you can choose. Yeah, they are all great texts. Lots happening, lots going on. Thank you for that, Mark. And then for the anthology text for paper 2 and paper 3, oh yes, The Danger of a Single Story. Yeah, really encourages students to think broadly, doesn't it? Yeah, thank you, Caitlin, for that. And then for paper 2, section A, or for the coursework, we've got Disabled, Out, An Unknown Girl, The Bright Lights of Sarajevo, Still I Rise, The Story of an Hour, The Necklace, Significant Cigarettes, and so on. Okay, fantastic for boys. Story of an Hour. I've got lots coming in here. So Story of an Hour seems to be very popular in this group today. So a few bits now about teaching the anthology. So this is a very interactive session. So please, anything you think about the way in which you teach the anthology, any sharing of good practice, please pop it into the chat box. What resources do you use? Different approaches. How do you feel that you encourage your students to be confident about themes, language, and structure? And of course, interesting about Still I Rise. Okay, I can't really comment on what's in the anthology. What's in the anthology, in a way, is what's in the anthology. Rock and a Hard Place film. Okay, it's got some nice. Yeah, Rock and a Hard Place film extract. Thanks, Fern. Any other teaching ideas here that you would want to share? Okay, scaffolding. Yep, good ideas here. So the comment there in the chat about language B. I'm just scrolling back up. Okay, Rasna, language B is obviously a different specification. There is training on language B, but I'm running. I can't remember if it's this week or next week, but this is obviously specific to language A, which has the anthology. Language B doesn't. So you might want to sign up for the language B one. Okay, some lovely things coming through the chat. Okay, so thank you for popping those in there. Certainly for those people new to the specification, they're going to be very useful. So what we're going to do now is look at some different approaches and ideas. These aren't things you must do. They are just ideas. Every student, every teacher obviously has a different way of teaching, every student a different way of learning. So these are just to spark ideas. So there is a lesson plan, SO4, in your download pack. might just be nice to have a little look at that. These are editable. Okay, thanks, Rathan. That's good. So just to make you aware of that, you might just want to have a quick glance at that for a moment. There are others on the website. And then we're going to go on to have a look at a few different approaches and ideas. Again, these are just ideas as we go forward. So approaching unseen text, this is quite a challenging part of the exam. Obviously, students have their seen text, but the unseen text is new to them on the day of the exam, and they're reading a text that they haven't been taught. Now, they need this for the question 5, the comparison, where they're looking at AO3. And they have to show they understand the text for the short answer questions as well, which are questions 1, 2, and 3 on the exam paper. So they need to build their confidence in tackling unseen text. They need to be able to trust their own interpretation of what they're seeing. So we're just going to have a little look at this. So the text types studied are going to be include a range of non-fiction forms such as journalism, for example, articles, reviews, speeches, journals, reference book extracts, that kind of thing. Text types should also include literary non-fiction texts, such as autobiography, letters, obituaries, travel writing. These aren't exhaustive lists. Texts that are essentially transient, instant news feeds, will not form part of the assessment. All right, so I'm just looking at the questions here. So as a sole trainer, we've got a lot of delegates in the room today. So just bear with me if your question isn't answered. I'll give you some other ways of getting those questions answered later. Are unseen texts only applicable to non-fiction texts, or also the poetry and prose exam? No, the poetry and prose exam, paper 2, question 1, is always on one of the extracts from part 2 of the anthology. The only place an unseen text appears is in paper 1. And they only use it for questions, the short questions 1, 2, 3, and question 5, the comparison. So in terms of finding unseen text, obviously you can look at past papers. Some of you will be doing what we call the R paper, and some of you will be doing the main paper. So let me just explain what those are. So the main paper is the paper that's sat in this part of the world and in some of our time zones. And in other time zones, we have the R paper, which the R stands historically for regional. It's obviously just to do with time zones. They are of the same standard. They use they don't use the same text in the same series, but they use the same text from the anthology, but there'll be different texts in different series. And it's obviously to stop students who've already sat the exam telling those who are in China or Hong Kong, where sorry, Melissa, I'll come to your question in a moment. What the texts are. So that provides you with a huge number of unseen resources that you can use. You can also find them for the main paper, and you'll find that on the Edexcel website. That has the course code of 1ENO. You'll find text there, unseen extracts, obviously websites, there are a list of them there, but you may know others. And you may have other places where you find good unseen text. And if you want to pop those into the chat to help your colleagues, that would be great as well. Okay, could you send the link for the lesson plans? I am going to, Melissa, refer to the Pearson website later on and show you a little bit of that, and that will show you where to find those as well. Hope that helps. Okay, so we're thinking now about dynamic reading skills. Students need to be encouraged to develop skills through all of their reading. And it also really helps them with confidence and tackling the unseen text. So, they need to be able to question and challenge text, to make connections, to kind of think about, envisage and predict what's going to happen, to speculate, to play with ideas, to keep the options open in their heads. So a little bit more about this. Again, these are just ideas, but Barbara Blyman from the English and Media Centre has suggested that we often start from the wrong point when asking students to interrogate text. Instead of saying, what's your response and why, we tend to think about smaller considerations like language techniques, structure, and she suggests that perhaps lower down the school, we might begin with 4 simple questions. What are my first thoughts? Am I puzzled or intrigued about anything in the text? What do I like about it? Does it remind me of anything? So I'm just going to scroll back up for a moment because I think there was a question in there. Do pupils have their own annotated anthologies in the exam? Is it open book? No. No, it's closed book. They have a copy of the extract in the exam for both the exam papers, but they can't take in their annotated anthologies. Slightly different in literature, but we're doing English language today. Okay, so we're going to have a little go at this. We've got some images here. So what do you like about it? Does it remind you of anything? What are your first thoughts? Have a little go in the. Is there a pre-recorded version of this if you're talking about this particular training? No, there isn't. Terrible weather. Yeah, we've got some about here in London today as well. Terrible weather. Okay, so I'm going to be quiet for a moment, give you a little chance to pop your ideas into the chat box there. Okay, so you can see how this works. That we're getting lots and lots of different ideas coming through in the chat box there. Yeah, West London might be a pretty good guess, actually. It's very familiar. So you can see how using images is can encourage reading skills. We're reading that picture. It's a nice openers. Of course, they have to read text in the exam, but sometimes we go and say, oh, look at this simile, look at this metaphor, when we're not looking at the bigger picture sometimes. So these are just openers that you can use in the classroom. So students are very comfortable, aren't they, with images, with short films, but these kind of visual images help students notice details, explore ideas, link to the details, to analyze meaning. They can evaluate using these these images as well. So thank you again for engaging in all the chat there. So it's just different ways of looking at text analysis and to think about reading skills. So I've got another one here. I'm going to mute myself for a moment. I want you to have a little look at that. And our question here is, which of these would you support and why? Again, this is helping if we think about, if we just stand back from reading about sharks for a moment, but thinking about text, tone, purpose, literal meaning. Again, it's just a nice opener for students. Which would you support and why? Tone and purpose we're thinking about here. So I'm just going to go quiet for a moment. Got lots of votes on the blue here. Now you'll see that you're, using your skills here. We're using because, yeah, and that's a very good point, Jade. That as adults we might be preferring the layout of the Shark Trust UK, but yeah, they're both effective in different ways. But a teenage audience, of course, may be different. So in terms of tone, purpose, we're leading here as well to a little bit on the writing skills, aren't we? Where they're thinking about tone and purpose, a specific audience, and so on. So you can see how these little starters work quite well. Okay, so thank you for that. So now we're going to just think a little bit about AO2 skills. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's just quite a useful slide that you could use in the classroom. And we're thinking about language and structure. Now, AO2 is on paper 1 as a specific question. It's question 4, but it's also assessed on question 1 in paper 2, where AO1 and AO2 are assessed. So this assessment objective scans both, goes across both papers. It's useful for the anthology text, but it's also good for the unseen text and the comparison question. So just a few things for you to think about. As I said, it's not exhaustive. Okay, so that's AO2. Now we're going to think about approaches to comparison. So that's our AO3, assessment objective 3. We will be looking at assessment objectives in a little while. But just thinking about comparison and teaching it, and any good practice you'd like to share on comparison. We've got past papers where you can study different types of unseen text. Obviously, you can introduce parts of or whole anthology text as unseens, explore topics, look at similar topics, devise linking analytical questions. You can use a thematic approach. Any good practice that you would like to share about approaches to teaching comparison? And I'll just allow you to do that for a couple of minutes. It was something about peer assessment and past student papers. And obviously there are examples of those in the examiner reports. We'll be talking a bit more about examiner reports in Thursday's training. But you will have different levels of response to past comparison questions in those reports. Okay, any other good practice on comparison? Okay, the link to Thursday, you'll find it on the, if you go to training from Pearson, you can find the link on that. Okay, some great ideas coming in here. I hope this is useful for those of you who are new to teaching this spec. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, you're all great at interacting here. This is really good. I'm going to just mute for a moment and allow you to just have a little look through those. Okay, so obviously the course isn't just about the reading questions. We've got on, sorry, we're still sharing good practice. I'm going to mute again just for a moment. Okay, so obviously we've got the writing questions as well. half the marks on each of the papers is attached to the writing. So transactional writing in paper 1, and then imaginative writing in paper 2, or for the coursework. So it's important that students are aware of different forms of writing and how they interest and engage the reader. Okay. I saw a question there thrown about coursework. Yes, there is another training session. I'm just trying to think when it is. My colleague Jamie is running that. I think it's something like the 13th of October. But if you have a look on the Training from Pearson website, you'll find the date. There is a full session on coursework. Okay, and again, we're going to have a bit of discussion about the teaching of writing. So we've had feedback that some of our schools have started introducing the idea of writing workshops within their curriculum. A lesson maybe once every 2 weeks dedicated to free writing. Some use a separate notebook for these lessons. Students are just encouraged to write about something they want to write about. It can be imaginative, persuasive, but the focus is on why they make the choice they make. The teachers found this useful. It encourages students to talk about their writing more, explain and understand the choices they've made, those kind of things. Again, Barbara Blyman from the English and Media Centre talks about opportunities for experimenting and risk-taking, as well as editing and redrafting. She says these have shrunk in recent years. And to kind of open up those opportunities again. I know the curriculum time is very tight, but it's just a suggestion. But creating a culture in which there's time for writing. Oh, thank you for popping that link in. That's really helpful. Obviously, sharing my screen, I can't go to the internet and find other things. Otherwise, we'll move away from the presentation. So the thing now about writing, thinking about how you prepare your students for writing across the course. The transactional writing, the imaginative writing, do you take different approaches? How do you engage your students? How do you help them improve their writing? Oh, that's quite interesting about the module 2. Are we talking about the same thing? Because there are 2 courses coming up. Module 2 is on getting ready to teach, and I'm just trying to get hold of my diary. But there's another one, another training session called Meeting the Assessment Criteria. So just bear with me. Welcome to A is on the 26th, and then Meeting the Assessment Criteria is on the 1st. So I hope that kind of clears that up. Okay, so thinking now about how you prepare your students. Do you spend enough time? It's just a question for you, really. Do you spend enough time on the specific teaching of writing? How do you combine reading and writing skills in lesson plans? So again, I am going to mute for 3 or 4 minutes and give you time rather than interrupting to share how you teach writing. So it will be quiet for a few minutes and give you a chance to share good practice. Okay, and I did see your comments there. I would get in touch with Claire Haviland about that. I'll be sharing her details later. I'm just going to give you a couple more minutes, well, a couple of maybe 30 seconds, and then we'll move on. So any other final comments on teaching writing? Okay, we're going to talk now about planning, about how you encourage your students to plan. You know, thinking about mind mapping, brainstorming, listing ideas, selecting the best ideas from a list, um, letting them see you plan a piece of writing. That's always good. They students normally enjoy that. Uh, Paragraph plans, writing frames, um, how to produce a planning frame, creating the best structure. So anything you would like to share on planning? Um, there's a little bit of a continuation of the writing question from the last slide. So some great ideas coming in here. So thank you for that. anything on planning you want to share? Okay, so this one is again about using images to inspire writing. Um, Thinking here about the eats from this fridge. We can make stories around what we see. I'm sure looking at these, you've already made a story about the kind of person in 1, 2, and 3. Um, so that's all very useful stuff, isn't it? You can ask for adjectives, names, dialogue. It's a very good kind of lesson starter, if you like. Just thinking about images. And of course, if you do the exam route, one of the things students can do is respond to one of the images for the writing question there, the imaginative writing. Okay, so let's try and put this all together. So we really have had great ideas in this one today. Um, Thinking about teaching time. Have you made that decision, those of you who are new, whether you're going to do the exam route or the coursework route? How are you thinking about revision? When are you building in mocks and tests? Um, just something to think through. We've still got some really great practice coming in here, so thank you for that. Anything anybody wants to think about, share in terms of planning, anything that's worked for you, anything you've had to change if you're already teaching it because you found that your original plan didn't work and you needed more time for unseen or comparison or writing. Anything you'd like to share there? Let me give you a moment to make any comment you like about planning before we just move on to a bit more. Um, Thank you for that, Fern. You've got a copy of the slides. I don't think you get a copy of the recording though. Hopefully the slides will be enough with the resources, but it just might take a little bit of a mix and match there for you. Okay, so in the pack, we're thinking now about planning. There are some planning, there are some planning documents and schemes of work. Have a quick look, and if you've already started teaching the course, what do you start with? What do you start with at the beginning of this, 2-year course? How do you plan? So we're looking at the planners. These are SO6 in your download. So have a quick look and think about where you start, what would be best for your cohort. This would differ depending on your school type, your candidate type, but any, again, good practice that you would want to share pop it into the chat, please. and then we're going to just go on to have a quick look at the question papers. So anything about planning, I'll give you a moment to just have a look through the planners that are in your download. So I'll just pop something in the chat myself about that. So right at the beginning, we had a hyperlink to the downloadable materials. Just wonder if in the background you could, there we are, thank you very much. There it is again for you. Okay, so moving on, had a little bit of time to look at those planners, and obviously you have time off after today because they're downloadable. They're also on the website. We're just going to talk now about assessment and the exams for a little while. So just a reminder that paper 1 is non-fiction and transactional writing. Paper 2 or paper 3 are exam coursework. Centres choose one of those. The focus there is poetry and prose text and imaginative writing, and the spoken language endorsement is optional. So in terms of assessment objectives, all awarding bodies use assessment objectives to write and to mark their assessments. They form the basis of all exam papers, and the questions and mark schemes are directly linked to them. So for 4EA1, there are 3 reading assessment objectives, AO1, AO2, AO3, covering understanding of text, critical analysis, and comparison, and 2 writing assessment objectives covering content and structure and accuracy. And there's one, and those are assessment objectives 4 and 5, and there's one spoken language assessment objective. So looking at what these are, we'll be looking at these again in module 2, but we can see here what they are and their relative weightings over the qualification. So AO1 is read and understand a variety of texts, selecting and interpreting information, ideas, and perspectives. And that's 15% of the final qualification. AO2 is understand and analyze how writers use linguistic and structural devices to achieve their effects. And that's 20% of the final qualification. So AO1 and AO2 are in both paper 1 and paper 2, or paper 1 and coursework. AO3 is explore links and connections between writers' ideas and perspectives, as well as how these are conveyed. And that's only in paper 1. AO4 and AO5, which are the two writing assessment objectives. Communicate effectively and imaginatively, adapting form, tone, and register of writing for specific purposes and audiences. That's 30%. And write clearly using a range of vocabulary and sentence structures with appropriate paragraphing and accurate spelling, punctuation, and grammar. So we can see that the AO1, AO2, AO3, the reading assessment objectives are 50%, and AO4, AO5, the writing assessment objectives are 50%, and AO6, which is the spoken language endorsement, is an endorsement at pass, merit, or distinction on the front of the certificate. Okay. So where are those assessment objectives actually assessed? So paper 1, section A, we're assessing AO1, AO2, AO3. Those are the reading assessment objectives. Paper 1, section B, the transactional writing, we're assessing AO4 and AO5. Paper 2, section A, which is on the anthology text, assessing AO1 and AO2. And the imaginative writing, section B of paper 2, is AO4 and AO5. The coursework, paper 3, mirrors paper 2. So assignment A is AO1 and AO2, and assignment B, the imaginative writing, is AO4 and AO5. I hope that's clear. It will make a little bit more sense, perhaps, if we look at that in relation to the question paper. Question papers for the June 2024, and those are SO8, so SO7 and SO9. SO7 is 4EA101 and SO9 is 4EA102. So we are going to move on now to looking at those question papers in a moment. So just thinking about paper 1, if I can ask you to open that up. So paper 1 is SO7. And again, we're going to have some time here to share a little bit of the practice about timing, about how you encourage your students to spread their time in this paper. There's no right or wrong approach. You know your students. Some centres look at the number of raw marks available and the time and advise students that way. Some talk about section A and section B. Others just follow the advice of the rubric on the front of the exam paper. So does anybody want to share how they encourage their students to divide their time? It's a demanding paper 1. There are, students answer 6 questions in total. Obviously, there's a choice of question 6 or question 7 for the transactional writing. So how do you encourage your students to balance their time? As I said, there's no right or wrong answer, but just it's useful to have some ideas here. We've got an opportunity here as well to have a little read through paper 1 and think about the timing and just I think you might be talking about question 4 there, which is a 12 marker. And it is obviously on the text that they've studied with you in class. So quite often they have a lot to say about that. Um, and I think it can go one of two ways. You say it takes a lot of their time, but they neglect it because it's only 12 marks. And sometimes they can spend too much time on it because they know it and they've studied it and they've got a lot to say. And then perhaps that might affect their score on question 5, which is a 22 marker. So they can go one of two ways, perhaps that question 4 on the text they've studied, the AO2 question on paper 1. Anything else about timing on paper 1 before we move on? So a little bit here about walking, talking mocks. This is something that is quite, I think, possibly normal now here in the UK. I don't know how widely it's used around the world, but it's where students sit in the exam room and hopefully in the place that they're going to be sitting. Um, I can just see the chat going up at the same time. For their actual exam, they're given the exam paper, if possible, even with the writing booklet. And they're literally talked through every question of the paper, even the smallest steps, such as underlining the key words, how to plan, things to remember. You've now got X amount of time to do this. Um, they're told about now read, extract the unseen extract. Now answer question 1. You should be doing this, should be taking X number of minutes. Now do question 2. This should be, and so on. The walking, talking mocks are just something that you hope that your students, when they come to the actual exam, remember exactly what you said in that walking, talking mock. Ah, yes, now I change extracts and so on. Yeah, I think you're right, Thomas. This can really help students know that they can do it in the time, know that when to move on. I think it's quite common for candidates now to write how much time they should be spending at the start of the long tariff questions. Can be very, very helpful, particularly, as you say, for anxious students. Okay, so now we're going to think about the questions. As I said, there's going to be much more about assessment in module 2 of this. But we're going to talk a little bit about the AO1 questions. There are 3 of them. In the June 2024 series, it was Ben Fogle and the Tin Bath tournament. You will have seen that in the question paper that you've downloaded for today. So there are 3 AO1 questions. They do carry a significant number of marks in terms of it's 2, 4, and 5. So there are 11 marks, which I think is roughly, I'm not a mathematician, 9% of the final mark here. So AO1 questions, this is how they were for the June 2024. But on the unseen text, from lines 4 to 6, select 2 words or phrases that describe the weather. Look again at lines 41 to 51. In your own words, describe what happens. And again, obviously, we've got the line references for question 3 as well. I'm just going to stop for a moment and have a look at that, the chat. So just bear with me while you have a little look at those. Again, you might want to just glance through the extract that was given to students in June 2024. Okay, Caitlin, I could see, yeah, that isn't something I would have control over. But you could find out, certainly as we move towards the end of today's session, where there are any other questions and where to direct them, you could perhaps take it up there. Okay, so those are the AO1 questions on paper 1. And the AO2 questions. So we're looking now at question 4. This is obviously a more detailed and developed response is required here, because we've moved now from the unseen text to the text that students have studied. So they need to comment on the writer's use of language and structure. They need to create, an essay style question here, making sure their points are relevant. It's not everything I remember that my teacher told me about this. It's got to be relevant to the question that's asked on the day. But we're talking about word choice and their impact, language, the techniques used by the writer, the effect. We're talking about the ideas that the writers had, and how they've expressed those. Structural points in the questions about language and structure, sentence length, rhetorical questions, paragraphing, purpose and effect. All of those things come into AO2, and what the principal examiner is looking for in responses there. 12 marks, so it is a significant number of marks that are available. So we've got here the mark scheme. This is a levels-based mark scheme. So questions 1, 2, and 3 are points-based. We're now moving on to a levels-based mark scheme. So if we're looking at the first bullet point on this levels-based mark scheme, it's about the understanding of language and structure and what they do with that. So if we move our way up through this levels-based mark scheme, in level 1, we're talking about basic, in level 2, some, in level 3, clear, in level 4, thorough. It's about the understanding and exploration of the language and structure techniques. And in level 5, perceptive. Now we'll see these in, we'll be exemplifying these much more. This is just a general overview today, but we'll be looking at these in more detail. And the second bullet point in this levels-based mark scheme is about references. Yeah, those brief quotations they're using as evidence to support their answers. So they go from limited to valid to appropriate and relevant to detailed, appropriate, and fully supporting, and then to discriminating and clarifying the points being made. This is SO8, page 11, because this is a little bit small possibly on your screens. So the question in the June 2024 series, the extract, the scene extract, the extract from the anthology was a game of polo with a headless goat. And students were told, remind yourself of the extract from a game of polo with a headless goat, text 2 in the source booklet. How does the writer, Emma Levine, use language and structure in text 2 to interest and engage the reader? You should support your answer with close reference to the extract, including brief quotations. So that was the question that was asked. And we've got an extract from a response there. So just have a little look at that. It isn't the whole response. Okay, and I'm just going to, while you're reading that, just take up this question. What are some of the structural techniques? So Simon, if you go back into the earlier on slides, there was an AO2 slide that on the left-hand side had language and on the right-hand side had structure techniques. So that will be helpful for you there. And how many are the students required to write? Oh, this is a levels-based mark scheme, so it's not points marking. So it depends on the quality of what they're saying. So I know students always want to know how many do we have to do, but there isn't an answer to that, unfortunately. It's really on the quality, and the only way you can see the quality is really by going back through the examiner reports and looking at what does a level 5 response really look like. So as it happens, this one on the screen is a level 5 response. This is what it would look like, but again, this is just an extract. So I can't give you an answer to the how many. I can give you the structural techniques or some of them, and we can tell you about quality and but not about quantity. So if we a lesson plan format, not too sure what you mean. The lesson plans we've got available are on the website, which I'll be showing you later. So this is from this little bit of this extract here is from page 34 of the examiner report, which is available for you online. And the comment that the principal examiner made here is this response contains a wide range of interesting points. The candidate is discriminating in their selection of references and offers analysis of a range of language and structure features. These include the fact that the extract opens in media res, the use of tone and humour, a close focus on an analysis of the use of roaring, oral imagery, the implications of the verb swerve, and the ending of the extract. There is a perceptive detailed analysis, and this response fulfills all of the level 5 criteria. So this one did receive a 12. As I said, this is only an extract, but you can get the whole response from that examiner report. Okay, so moving on to AO3, this is our comparison assessment objective. So compare is the command word, the verb in the question. So it's a good idea to start your comparison straight away. They're asked to compare how writers present their ideas and perspectives. So they need to consider the author's viewpoints, attitudes, thoughts, opinions about the subject matter. They need to look for points of both similarity and difference and support what they say with evidence from the text. And the indicative content section of the mark schemes for all of the past papers gives a good idea of the kind of comments that students can make here. So the question from the June 2024 paper was compare how the writers present their ideas and perspectives about their experiences. Support your answer with detailed examples from both texts, including brief quotations. So again, we're going to just have a little look at the mark scheme. Again, it's a little bit small, but we've got our assessment objective 3 there, telling us what it is. And if we look at the levels as we go up, the first one is about the comparison. The second one is about the ideas and perspectives, and the third one is about the references. So you can see there that there is a bar at the top of level 2. Candidates can't go above that if they only write about one text. And it would have to be really good, wouldn't it, to be able to get to the top of level 2. So level 1, we've got doesn't compare. Level 2, obvious comparisons. Level 3, a range of comparisons. Level 4, a wide range. And level 5, varied and comprehensive range. And if we go to the second bullet point where we're looking at the ideas and perspectives, in level 1, that would be descriptive. So just a narrative thing. In level 2, there's some comment. Level 3, explanation. Level 4, we move to exploration. And level 5, we're looking at analysis. And then the references limited in level 1, valid in level 2, appropriate in level 3, balanced in level 4, and discriminating and fully support the points in level 5. Okay, and you can see there's a question there, so I'm just going to pick that up. Best way to go about writing a good comparison question. Is it to write first what the writer of the passage 1 does, and then passage 2, and then write comparison similarities and differences? I would say the most secure ones tend to be ones that keep the two texts in tension throughout. I think if they write about text 1 followed by text 2, they are likely to become slightly narrative in their approach. So to keep the focus on the actual comparison all the way through. You will be able to find examples again in the examiner reports, and they're all available for you from past series. Of course, the other advantage of an international GCSE is that there are 2 series every year. So, and because we've got on this paper a regional paper, there are so many examples for you to look at. So this is an extract here from this year, the June 2024 paper. So I'll just give you a moment to scan through that, and then I'll talk about what the principal examiner said about this. Okay, I don't want to really confuse A with B at the moment. Certainly comparison generally is to keep your two texts in tension. But obviously I'll be covering B is a different beast to A because it's just one paper, and the questions are phrased slightly differently. So you can see the full response for this question on pages 51 to 55 of the examiner report. It was given level 5. It's not at the top of level 5, so it's not at 22. This got a mark of 20. And the comment made by the principal examiner was the candidate makes a varied and comprehensive range of comparisons, although some points are less developed than others. The response begins by considering Vogel as participant versus Levine as a spectator, and moves through points about both writers' use of language and structural features. The response also covers the unexpected endings, the focus on the crowds, ideas on the respective tone and atmosphere of each text, and moves through the writer's feelings and perspectives at the end of the races. Pertinent references have been selected to support the points made, and this response is worthy of a mark firmly within level 5, 20. Okay, so moving on now to, this is quite a full session, to the writing. So we're looking at AO4 and AO5 for the writing assessment objectives. So paper 1, candidates are given a choice. This is transactional writing, always a choice and always scaffolded, by which I mean there are always bullet points to guide students here. The question paper is in the pack. From the examiner report from June 2024, the principal examiner stated that question 7 was the more popular of the 2 questions. So we are going to just be looking at a snippet of a question 7. But the tasks were, question 6, a magazine is inviting readers to send in a review of a memorable event which they have seen or experienced. Write the review that you would submit to the magazine. Your review may include a description of the event, your opinion of the event and the reasons why it was memorable, and any other points you wish to make. And then there's signposting to the AO5. Your response will be marked for the accurate and appropriate use of vocabulary, spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Or they could choose question 7 Too much emphasis is perhaps placed on the idea of winning. It can be just as important to take part and try hard. Write the text of a speech to be delivered to your peers in which you express your views on this statement. Your speech may include what winning might mean in different areas of life, the benefits of taking part, and any other points you wish to make. And again, that's signposting to the A05. So we're working here with two mark schemes. A04, which is about the quality of the communication and the purpose of the writing, form, tone, and register. So there are 5 levels in this level space mark scheme. We can see here that the first bullet point is always about the communication. The second bullet point is about purpose and the expectations of the reader. And the third bullet point is about form, tone, and register. So looking at our first bullet point, in level 1, we've got communication is basic, broadly appropriate in level 2, clear in level 3, successful in level 4, and perceptive and subtle in level 5. Then in terms of purpose, the second bullet point, little awareness in level 1, some grasp in level 2, clear sense in level 3, meeting the expectations of the reader, secure realization in level 4, and sharply focused and meeting the expectations of the intended reader in level 5. And then in terms of form, tone, and register, little awareness in level 1, straightforward in level 2, appropriate in level 3, effective in level 4, and sophisticated in level 5. So that's our AO4 for questions 6 and 7. And then we've got our AO5, which is about write clearly, the range of vocabulary, the sentence structures, the paragraphing, the spelling, the grammar, the punctuation. So it's a lot more than just spelling, punctuation, and grammar here. You know, there are lots of other things that we're looking for as examiners. So again, we've got 3 bullet points in each level. The first is about the ideas and the information, structural and grammatical features. The second is about vocabulary, and the third is about punctuation. So expresses information, expresses and orders information in level 2, develops and connects that information and ideas in level 3, manages it in level 4, and manipulates complex ideas with the range of structural grammatical features in level 5. In terms of vocabulary, level 1, basic, level 2, correctly spelt, level 3, varied, level 4, wide selective vocabulary, and level 5, extensive vocabulary used strategically. And then punctuation in level 1, basic control, in level 2, some control, in level 3, accurate and varied punctuation, in level 4, range of punctuation, and in level 5, accuracy to aid emphasis. Okay, question there about the mark schemes are in line with AQA. Mark schemes do tend to be very similar across awarding bodies. Obviously for home GCSEs, Ofqual sets the weighting of the assessment objectives. That's likely to be why they're similar. But obviously the skills are similar, aren't they? Anyway, for you know, levels-based mark schemes are always going to be there for high mark tariff questions. Okay. So here we have the question 7, which we looked at earlier. And there's a little extract there, which I'll give you a moment to read. So this is a level 5 response. It's on pages 79 to 82 of the examiner report if you're looking at that as well. That's available for you to download online. So the examiner report states about this one, the candidate poses a question in the opening paragraph and provides a possible answer in a skillfully constructed start to this assured and at times sophisticated response. An anecdote is used thoughtfully and effectively to illustrate the argument being developed, and the candidate presents a range of perceptive and subtle points. Communication is perceptive as the candidate manipulates a range of complex ideas. An extensive vocabulary is used, and there is some sophisticated crafting of sentence structures. This response sits securely within level 5 for both assessment objectives. So in total, it got 43 marks. Okay, so a little bit about exam and coursework. The examiner report, Chantal, is on the Pearson website. I'll show you where it is when we get to that slide in a moment. So this is how they're set out. We're going to go through these quite quickly. So poetry and prose, an essay, paper 2, exam route, essay question on one anthology text from part 2 of the anthology in section A, AO1 and AO2, 30 marks, and section B, imaginative writing, creative response, AO4, AO5, 30 marks, weighted 18 and 12 for the 2 AOs. This is how it looked for June 2024. How does the writer present the importance of traditional Indian culture in An Unknown Girl? In your answer, you should write about how the writer presents the cultural experience with the unknown girl, how the writer presents feelings about the place, the use of language and structure. You should support your answer with close reference to the poem, including brief quotations. And then the creative writing question, there's a choice of 3. There will always be a choice of 3 questions for this. I'll just give you a moment to have a read through those because you've been listening to me for a long time. So students just choose one of those writing tasks. Nice range. And again, that's signposting to the 2 assessment objectives with the AO5 in the italics. And then paper 3, so if you're doing coursework, assignment A, poetry and prose text is 130 mark essay question based on any 3 poetry or prose texts from part 2 of the anthology. And they have to do at least 1 poetry, at least 1 prose, and then their 3rd choice. Now, just a reminder that that has that changed for first assessment this year. There used to be a commentary in that, so just a reminder that that has changed now. And then assignment B mirrors paper 2, and it's a piece of imaginative writing, 130 mark question. So thinking about the poetry and prose text for assignment A, for the coursework, I'll just give you a moment, those of you doing coursework, to have a read through of that. This is from the sample assessment materials. It's obviously from the updated version because the assessment has changed slightly. So you have to make sure you're using the most recent editions of both the specification and the sample assessment materials. This can help guide students with the task. There's also a guide to coursework on the website, which you might want to look at. There's some online coursework training coming up, which you can as well book on the website. So I hope that's useful for you. So both the specification and the sample assessment materials reflect this new way of assessing the new content for assignment A. So the student, the task has to make sure that students read and understand their chosen 3 texts. That they select and interpret the information, ideas, and perspectives for AO1, and that they're also analysing the language and structure devices used by the writers for AO2. Approximately 1,200 words. There's a question there about, since there is no requirement to compare the 3 texts, would this be 3 separate essays? Yes, there is no requirement to compare here. Some students make it just a link as they move between the texts, but I wouldn't say 3 completely separate essays. But we are talking about 3 separate texts, and no comparison. We will be talking more about that, obviously, in the coursework training. An introduction and conclusion. I'm not sure if you mean to all 3 texts or to each text. I would just say keep away from narration. Presume your examiner does know the story, does know the poem. Yeah, that helps there. So here's a sample task for assignment A. Discuss how the writers use language and structure to present, whichever text it is, in whatever the focus is, and then the 3 texts. So we're, in terms of 3 separate essays, we're probably looking, thematically at something that runs through the 3. In your response, you could discuss the ideas and perspectives of the writers about the chosen focus, discuss how the writers use language and structure to achieve their effects, and include textual references to illustrate the points made. Now, on the website, there are 3 responses were modelled for this that you're able to download. But there is also specific training coming up that uses, I think, 6 different responses. And that's those of you doing coursework, that's going to be a very useful training course. Yes, to the whole essay, yes, Louise, I would say yes. And then we've got a similar slide here that's taken from the sample assessment materials again, about how to form, this is guidance for teachers, of course, but it can be shared with your students. One imaginative writing task, talking about how to look at that task. It can use something from the anthology as inspiration. That they're talking about form, tone, and register. Obviously, planning the response is a good way forward. Talking about the split of the assessment objectives, 18 for AO4 and 12 for AO5. Approximately 700 words, but again, there is no penalty for going over that. So I'll just give you a moment to have a little look through that. It may be inspired from their wider reading. It can be inspired by past papers. There are lots of ways that students can choose what to write about for their imaginative piece. Yes, I think you're right, Simon. The examiner reports are very detailed. You get something at every level. You can even use them, give your top students a level 3 response and say, now turn it into a level 5 response. They're very, very useful documents, as well as saying what wasn't successful, what doesn't make a successful answer. And the other thing you've got as well in the examiner reports are the examiner tips, which of course are tips for your students as well. So that they're very useful documents. And here's a possible assignment title: write about a time when you or someone you know were united with friends or family. Your response could be real or imagined. In your response, you could describe ideas, events, settings, and characters. Use appropriate techniques for creative writing, vocabulary, imagery, language techniques. Use a voice that attempts to make the piece interesting and or believable to the chosen audience. Use a register and style appropriate for the chosen form, which may include colloquial elements, dialogue within description or narrative, obviously not too much dialogue, or a sustained single voice in a monologue. You should title your work. Your response will be marked for the accurate and appropriate use of vocabulary, spelling, punctuation, and grammar, which of course is the AO5 signpost. This slide is just about the spoken language endorsement. I think people were decided. We were about 50-50, weren't we, when I mentioned this earlier on? But that's just a bit more guidance for teachers about that. Okay, so we're going to talk now about support and resources. So we've got the Getting Started guide, which is available on the landing page of the Spec A website. Training events, face-to-face events we run from time to time in some of those regions that you said you were joining from, but also online events. The subject advisor support, I'll be talking about the subject advisor in a little bit. The schemes of work we've talked about, there's skills mapping available. The sample assessment materials we've talked about, and they were in your download pack. The examiner reports, which are available for download. Exemplar marked responses, past papers, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Exam Wizard in a moment. The mark schemes, the results plus, which I'm going to talk about, access to scripts, I'm also going to talk about. But there is support available for you at every stage, particularly if you're new. It's very confusing to come to a new specification. It's a little bit daunting, as somebody said at the beginning, that they were new to teaching. Yes, they are all available. All of these are available. Some of them are different platforms, which I'll talk about in a moment. So this is where you'll find the teaching and learning materials. So you can see here that on the right-hand side, you've got this is the landing page for Spec A. You've got specification and sample assessments, and the latest edition of those there. You've got exam materials, 167 pieces of exam materials. So those are all the past question papers, all the past mark schemes, main paper, R paper, and all the examiner reports are available there. Forms and administration, those are things like the coursework forms that you send in with your candidate coursework, authentication forms, all of those things are available there. Teaching and learning materials, those are things like schemes of work, past training, That's where you'll find past coursework exemplars. Yeah, if we could keep Spec B to Spec B, that would be okay, just because I don't want to confuse people who are just doing Spec A, if you wouldn't mind. I hope that's okay. So those are where to find all of the materials. Results Plus, some of you may be using this. It's a tool for teachers. It's an analytical tool. It's where you can see the in-depth data on performance of candidates. You can look at your school against other schools, classes against classes, questions against questions. You know, it can be very informative about whether you need to spend more time teaching question 5, if your students are doing really, really well on question 4, or it might be the other way around. You can do things with mock exam results on there. It's not just a post results tool. There are lots of videos and things showing you how you can use that, and there is a hyperlink for how you sign up for that. So you can just get a sign up for that very, very quickly. The other platform is Exam Wizard, which is again, it's got past papers, it's got banks of potential questions. Examiner report is there. That's where the question papers will first appear. Very, very useful tool for you. It means students can't second guess what you're going to use. So lots of things there that you can use. Access to Scripts is a free portal that allows you to see on results day the work of your candidates, the scanned scripts. It stops speculative reviews of marking. You get all of that is free of charge for you to see how your students have done, to advise your students on whether they want a review of marking. And I can see there's a question there, so just bear with me a moment while I look at this question. Okay, the anthology text. Well, the anthology texts have been there since the start of the specification on those for paper 2 and 3. Yeah, so section 2 of the anthology. Students should have seen those if they're doing specification A. Specification B has no anthology. Okay, so the skills mapping it is a downloadable resource. It shows you where it's exactly that. It shows you where skills are mapped across the qualification. That is it's under those resources that I've just shown you there. See if there's anything else. Okay, so Spec A and Spec B are both options within English Language A. No, English Language A is Specification A, and we have 2 GCSE international specifications. One is A and one is B. A has an anthology, B doesn't. Okay, a couple more slides. We are committed to helping teachers deliver our EdXL qualifications and helping students to achieve their full potential. So we do support it with a wide range of high quality resources produced by a range of publishers. However, it isn't necessary to have these resources to deliver the qualification. So these resources, there is a student book. They're designed for anyone following the latest edition of the specification. It's designed specifically for specification A, the one that I'm showing you here, and it will help students going on towards IAL, the IB, and so on. It helps students obviously reach their full potential. It's useful. It comes with provides 3-year access to Active Book, which is a digital version of the student book. It's been redesigned for first teaching from September 2022, meaning that obviously it takes in those changes to paper 3. There's an online teacher resource pack. There's embedded transferable skills and so on. You'll be able to find more about that via that hyperlink. I'm just aware of the time, and we've got a couple more slides to go through. Claire is the subject advisor for all things English. So she is Spec A, Spec B, International A-level, Home A-level, Home GCSEs. She is the fount of all knowledge. So any questions you've got following today's training, she is your go-to person. So that her phone number is there, her email is there, her Twitter page. You can sign up and get her regular subject advisor updates, and you can book an appointment. So any questions you've got following today, please ask Claire. She's very, very quick on her email and very, very knowledgeable about all things English. So she'll be very helpful to you. Finally, any final questions? It's been a very, very busy event. I need to thank you very, very much for all of your top tips. I mean, that has been so, those of you teaching, thank you so much. It's been so helpful for people new to the specification. It's been sharing a fantastic good practice. Really appreciate you doing that, as I'm sure your colleagues have as well. I can't see any questions coming in. So if you're not available on Thursday, I don't think there'll be a recording available to you, but the training will be repeated during the course of the year. So thank you very much. Yes, you'll be getting a certificate to say that you attended this, a CPD certificate. Thank you all so much. And if I can pass back now to have the event closed. I hope you've enjoyed it.